Between 1939 and 1945, more than 6 million Jews were systematically murdered by the Nazis. Many more were imprisoned and tortured, not for what they did, but for who they were.
This is a perfect opportunity to see history firsthand and just to study something that I've always loved. It'll be really emotional, so I'm ready for that.
I feel like I'm taking this trip not only for myself, but for my family and my friends, and I'm really nervous about all of the emotions and all of the things that we're going to see. I think it's going to be an awesome experience.
I'm really excited to learn so much more on a personal level about the Holocaust. I feel so desensitized to these things that I'm told the same thing over and over again, and I hope that by hearing it on a personal level and actually going there will strike something or make it more real, or just something will happen.
I don't know what we'll find, but I'm sure it's going to be exciting along the way, and I'm ready for anything.
And I think the most emotional part is going to be walking through those gates and knowing how many millions of people walk through those gates and know that I can walk out at any time.
Exactly where do you start when you want to study a topic like this? To be honest, we didn't know. So we decided to start with students about our own age. And that took us to a high school in the town of Lunen, Westphalia. And for half a day, we were introduced to how the Holocaust is still a part of their lives 65 years after the fact.
Many people today do associate with Germany, it's the Holocaust.
65 years later, other cultures continue to remind Germans of their dark past.
I remember when I was 11 years old, I went the first time to England. And the first thing my first impression was that someone coming up to me, hearing that we are a German group, and he said, "Heil Hitler."
2 years ago, I was on summer holidays, I was in England, and also some people came behind us and made Hitler greetings and everything, and they just said, Heil Hitler.
And that was very frustrating.
Just because we were Germans, and I think it's a bad view, of wrong view.
This just kind of hit home with me, where kind of the disrespect by other cultures for the German people. In the U.S., we kind of joke around about it, and, I'll be honest, I've done, but doing it to a German person is completely, I think, just wrong.
To me, it was a very big push to deal with this. This is one of the things that made me a historian and a teacher.
Today, every German is required to study the Holocaust in school. And they told us that while talking about it has become more open, we found the generational gaps still exist.
A few years ago, one of the girls unfolded a big German flag when we left Poland. And it was horrible to me, because to my generation, it's not normal.
Before, it was very much never talked about. You always was very hush-hush with in our parents' generation, but the students would talk about much more freely and everything.
By now it got more free. We're talking about it with family, with my grandparents, who also really experienced it.
My grandparents, they do not talk about it, even if they have had experienced it. But I think my parents talked about it.
Einfach, dass man aus der Geschichte lernen muss und dass die Deutschen sich nicht schuldig fühlen müssen, sondern dass die Schuld bei den vorherigen Generationen bzw. bei den Nazis an sich liegt und dass wir einfach nur die Aufgabe haben, das zu verarbeiten und daraus zu lernen.
People should get more together. They should talk about and exchange more, so that everybody lives together with others in peace.
I would also hope that Germany could be put onto another focus, into another light in a more positive way, and also seeing the good sides of Germany.
Our first attempt to learn about the Holocaust had been successful, but what we didn't know was it was also one of the most painless. That would change later on. But for now, our next stop was 225 miles to the east in the small village of Kroppenstedt, in the hometown of one of our classmates. It was humbling to have an entire town open its arms to greet us.
They're just, making their ways to this small little community that really has not a lot to do with the rest of the world, and that even in war times didn't play a significant role. This little bubble of Kroppenstedt now got burst by those 12 or 14 Americans or 13 Americans come in, and everybody was just excited, everybody was just happy.
They also gave us access to their own stories of the past.
Der Hass war im Allgemeinen immer da gewesen. Und auf dem Rathausplatz, da haben sie doch auch etliche Juden angespuckt. Da war da so ein großes Kreuz von früher von Adolf noch.
Im Ort gab es eine Judenfamilie und die hatten ein Geschäft gehabt, also Textilien und Kurzwaren. Und da kann ich mich erinnern, wo das denn nachher anfing, dass es denn hieß, es darf keiner mehr bei Juden kaufen. Und waren nachher doch immer noch etliche, die dann...
Alles schöne Stories, aber wie das alles zusammenhängt, weiß ich nicht. Jedenfalls hat sich da jemand gemeldet und hat Oma mit der Mitleid gehabt. Jedenfalls hat er Angst gehabt und Oma hatte ihn unten im Keller. Da war er früher mit Kohle und das Viehzeug, die Kartoffeln. Und davor hat sie so ein großes Regal gehabt, wo das Schlachtezeug immer so drin war, weißt du, so in der U-Form. Und das hatte sie dann so ein bisschen von der Wand abgerückt. Und dahinter lag der Vierteljahr, halbes Jahr, kann ich ja auch alles nicht sagen. Und das war so gefährlich, wenn sie die damals gefunden hätten, oder hier gefunden, dann wären sie alle Männer. Die waren ganz verrückt. Und dadurch konnte sie sich Oma nicht viel erlauben.
It was the first time any of us had heard such stories firsthand from those who had actually lived it. Both the war and the Holocaust were starting to have a face. 2 hours later, it would be right in ours. We weren't ready for Bernburg. We were surprised to learn that in addition to murdering Jews, the Nazis also exterminated Germans who did not fit the ideal image. In Bernburg is a psychiatric hospital where the mentally ill, sick, old, and handicapped were systematically exterminated in 1940 and 1941. They called them mercy killings. The youngest victim was just 4 years old.
Standing in the gas chamber where people died before us, the same tiles, the same walls, probably the smell still in the stone.
This looks like a kitchen. This is a very typical tile, black and white kitchen floor. And like standing under like what a shower head looks like, and it's not a shower head.
Upon arrival, 60 to 75 people would be led by nurses to the gas chamber, one of the very first to be constructed in the Third Reich. There they would be suffocated by carbon gas. The chamber was disguised as a shower room. A single window allowed the doctors to film the dying.
In here you can see people's fingernail marks, scratching to get out, and it's just like, when you sit here and rub your fingers on it, you can just imagine the people on the outside looking at this, and I can just run my fingers down this and feel people's fingers scraping at the windows, and it's just unbelievable. I just can't imagine. People that had no idea that there was anything wrong with them, people who just were parents and kids and brothers and sisters, and they just had no idea what they were getting themselves into, and they didn't do anything wrong.
You walk down here and it's just this feeling, you can't describe it, but just sits down here and it's a small room, it's not very big, and just the amounts of people that were killed here, 14,000 people that don't even know 14,000 people.
Well over 1,000 people were killed here every month. In 1941, euthanasia facilities across Germany stopped killing the mentally ill and began killing Jews from nearby concentration camps. Nearly 5,000 Jews were murdered here at Bernburg, while the mentally ill were drugged and left to starve till their deaths.
It seemed to be this hospital, which always had been a hospital, but in reality it was a mass murder institution. I don't know, I'm speechless a lot of times when I think about what I see here now, when I try to digest it, you know what I mean? It's just breathtaking.
After they died, workers cleaned their bodies of excrement and vomit and dragged them to be dissected. The Nazis justified it as a cheap way to do medical research.
After these people feared for their lives for the last second, their bodies were dragged down this hallway and they would fill it with water, and the truck drivers who brought these live bodies into this place would then drag their bodies down this long hallway.
This was just something where I was just blown away.
It's just so weird that I'm walking in the same area that these bodies were dragged, and it's just so unreal that these people just feared for their lives and they had no idea why. And I mean, I'm scared. I can't imagine how they were scared.
In 1943, the facility closed its doors, and the doctors and nurses of Bernburg were allowed to remain in the profession. But the people who were euthanized in their care were never labeled as victims of the Third Reich. After leaving Bernburg, we traveled to Berlin. It was a very quiet bus ride. In 1933, Hitler and the Nazis marched triumphantly through the Brandenburg Gate to celebrate his rise to power. Today, it stands just a block north of the Holocaust Memorial, 2,711 cold, gray, standing stones. We made it one of our first visits and tried to make sense of it all.
We're in the Holocaust Memorial here in Berlin, and it's the only thing the state government of Germany has given the Jews here for the Holocaust Museum. I
think it's kind of offensive. I just think it's boring and plain, and to me it looks like it's the least we could do to recognize this and recognize the significance of what we did.
I just come in deeper and deeper because you have to explore it. You just can't walk by it and just be like, oh, I saw it, and leave. You want to come in and explore and see how deep a meaning you can get out of this. You can see people walking through, and in just a second they're gone. That can have some meaning too. Life can be over just like that.
I mean, after you think about it a while, it could be really symbolic. We were talking about here, we lost each other in here all the time. You couldn't find where everyone was, and
that's what happened. You lost your family during the Holocaust.
And you lost yourself too.
In the Jewish Museum, we were again brought face to face with the accounts of those who suffered so much. You begin to imagine what it must have been like to forfeit all control of everything you love. Tucked deep into a corner of the museum was one of the most powerful expressions of the Holocaust we would experience.
This literally puts a face to what happened, and how all their mouths are open. It's they're crying out for help, and this is just unreal. The power of this room, and this is just unreal. Nothing has ever touched me like this room. We see pictures of all these people, and this is just like real.
I can't even begin to count how many stones we've walked on and how many faces we've seen, and you know, they're not the same size, they're not the same shape, they're not the same color. And like I'm holding, you know, like a baby. No one that isn't standing right here is gonna understand the power of this.
Yeah.
When you think of the Holocaust, the image of a concentration camp usually comes to mind. Until this point, we had not yet set foot in one.
Today we went to Buchenwald concentration camp, and it was pretty emotional.
You see these places, these concentration camps, and you read about them, but until you're actually there, there's no comparison. I was with Christian, and we went into where the doctors would be, where they'd bring prisoners to be measured and to weigh them.
They would say that the doctors needed to see them, and they would stand them against this wall where they were going to take their height.
And if you went back behind that, there was a hidden closet if you walked out of the room. And once the prisoners would stand there, a German would shoot them in the back of the head, and that would be it.
Drag the body out and bring the next person in.
And it's just a continuous cycle of death and destruction. Also, seeing the mass grave in the back of camp, it brought me to tears. Just knowing that 9,000 people were killed at this one spot for no reason. It was just being at that spot, it's like, wow, this really happened. Can you just picture this? In 1945, everything that happened here. It wasn't even really a memorial. It was just a huge place with a fence and a bunch of poles. I almost feel guilty because same people walked down here and saw the same thing and then were shot and killed and never saw anything again.
I feel bad in the sense that I don't get emotional about it in the way that I was hoping to get emotional about it.
This overwhelming sense of anger, and not anger with myself, just anger at the Germans and anger at the Nazis.
For the SS people, you know, they live like family, have families, so they go home after they're in the concentration camp, and where they witness murders and where they're committing murders every day, and they go home and they just act like nothing happened, you know, with their family. I mean, I'd like to know how you cope with that.
I mean, that's what I would love to ask any Nazi is, how do you rationalize that in your mind?
Everyone to know what I've seen and what I've experienced, and I can't say it.
A 2-hour drive took us to Bamberg and a new challenge, this one philosophical. How should these dark days be remembered? By Jews, Germans, by us? At what point do you move on? Should you move on? Those questions haunted us as we talked with a successful German businessman. His father had been imprisoned in Dachau concentration camp by Hitler. But like many Germans, he had heard enough of Nazi atrocities that belonged to an earlier generation. We were mad and confused. Few of us were prepared to agree. But then he introduced us to a Jewish community leader who helped put it into perspective.
And then we went to the synagogue and talked to a Jewish person whose both of his parents and uncles were in concentration camps, and he said the same thing, and I guess I needed to hear that.
I felt just as great of a relief, probably even more. If I could have, always wanted to lose that burden off my shoulders, of the shoulders of my people. I have now heard firsthand that the other side isn't thinking about us that way.
Makes me realize that strong people forgive.
The next day we traveled to Nuremberg, the city where the Nazi movement gained its power. To walk through the Nazi museum and rally grounds, where thousands had professed their faith in the Fuhrer, was a chilling experience. It evoked a range of emotions in us.
It reminds you like the Roman Empire. It's like, oh wow, this is beautiful, this is great. You know, these buildings, like even though they're not complete, these are fantastic. And when they would be complete, these are super structures. You know, if you didn't know it was Hitler, you'd be like, all right.
I felt like they were bragging about what they had done.
Just knowing that this is, you know, where so much of the propaganda, so much of the sort of, you know, brain catching has taken place, where all these individuals were just, you know, mentally raped and were drawn into this boat of terror.
Why does there have to be a big museum about it? I didn't like it. I didn't want to read about it. I didn't want to learn about it. I didn't want to look at any of this stuff. I walked through there with a bad attitude.
I definitely, again, knew that amongst those hundreds of thousands of people, I think it was 200,000 people that we saw in some pictures, that were standing, you know, just hooraying and cheering for this beast. I would have been one of them, and I would have shouted the loudest, probably.
Just outside of Munich, in a small town, lies the first concentration camp to be built in Germany. It was here where from 1933 to the fall of the Third Reich in 1945, that 200,000 prisoners passed through the gates reading Arbeit macht frei, work will set you free. Over 43,000 of them died at the hands of the SS in the fenced-in walls of the camp known as Dachau. Removed from the camp in a clearing of trees stands the crematorium. The prisoners were unaware of its existence except on the days when smoke poured out of the chimneys and the smell of burning flesh filled the air.
It's like you're walking into a park. How can you even have any kind of hope in a place like this? And what I didn't think I would see when I got here is how well thought out this was. I just thought, you know, that I don't know what I thought, but I didn't think that I was going to be walking into a factory.
They were people of my age, and I'm just going to say, if that was me 7 decades ago, I would be in those uniforms. I could be the one piling up those dead bodies, cracking jokes in the sun, making, you know, fun of them with my full belly, with my happy family at home.
I just don't understand how God can create such a beautiful environment and then also let this happen. How can the two things make sense? I just don't get it. How can that happen? Just one after another. Bodies with no identity were just destroyed, like they never existed.